Hello and welcome to the Really Rubbish Racing V8 Australicars. We're here in Perth, Australia for the second endurance race on the Really Rubbish Racing calendar, the Wanneroo 160 Clicks. I'm joined as ever by Nicholas Galumis up here in the commentary box, but also a special guest, Campbell Wallace, of course, as well. Good afternoon to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you both? Are you well?
Good, good.
Yeah, excellent.
Fantastic, looking forward to the racing today. A 65 lap race, just a 1.5 mile circuit, 2.42 kilometres in old money, and 7 turns as well. Probably the shortest lap on the calendar, but nonetheless a challenge expected for the drivers.
Yeah, short tracks always, obviously, because there's not much space for the cars to space out, will lead to a lot of lap traffic and maybe a few incidents to come.
Indeed, so let's have a look at the championship standings and the offenders. Leading the way, Sam Hirani, of course, out in front, 170 next to Ollie Knight's 117 for Junior Motorsports. James Price-Harper there in third position, the number 78 on 91. Dillon in fourth with 315 points. So it's all fairly close, especially for second position there, Campbell.
Yes, it's championship shaping up. Sam Hirani's trying to run away with it at the front, but there's still plenty of racing to be done. And here is Hirani's pole lap, a very short track, no traffic immediately in front of him, which is quite something, because in a short track like this, even with a slight diminished field, plenty of cars as we see. I know it's Matt Davies coming out the pits right in front of him, gets out the way. These sweepers, just, it's easy to spin in the exit of them, they're quite slow and you have to be in fairly low gear to get round them. Over the hill.
He's keeping the car control very nicely, coming down towards this very, very difficult sort of hairpin. The car, the track rather, tightens up, I should say, and it's very, very hard to get onto the power there. The rear likes to spin up, of course. You've got positive, negative camber, and it's a very difficult part of the lap before you come over the crest of the hill and downhill towards turn 7, the final part of the lap. Find the braking point. It's about the 50-metre board on the left, or just beforehand, 70 metres or so before the corner, and on the raggedy edge, running it out wide and not into the old pit lane, of course, and crossing the line. Sam Hirani taking a 52.848 second pole lap. A great lap there from the championship leader.
Yeah, typical Hirani, fast as ever and mistake-free. And so he'll be fancying his chances, because it could be quite tricky to overtake with this much traffic in such a short lap.
Yep, certainly could be. So the cars lining up and heading out on their formation, and then just out of the pit lane as well. And of course, it's a relatively short pit lane. It's a relatively short pit straight as well. So it's pretty cramped in there, as I'm sure you can imagine. Thank goodness that drivers will be making pit stops on separate laps. Otherwise, we'll probably see a couple of comings together in the pit box, Nick.
Yeah, the track is actually so short that if you could be coming in for a pit stop and somebody has already served there, so a bit of crossover there to watch out for the drivers. So two offenders drivers on the front row as per usual. Joe Nathan, fantastic qualifying by him in third position. Pete Walker as well, that's pretty good qualifying position compared to what we've seen from him so far in this season. Of course, the time gaps here not as large as they usually are, a sub 1 minute lap, but even though we're coming down already on row 5, over a second a lap slower, but just goes to show just how a few tenths here and there can lose you not just one place on the grid, but even 1 or 2 rows.
Yep, certainly can do. Coming down to the middle part of the field, Tom Brooks there in 13th position, Dave Morley 14th, Matt Davies for PSP Motorsports getting quite far up the order in 15th, and Ben Haddleton there in 16th position as well. So a relatively small grid, and that'll probably be a bit of a saviour for the drivers, of course, at the front of the field. Less traffic for them to get past, and we're expecting lapped traffic, of course, within the early stages of this race, such as the short duration. So Sam Hirani then leading the field around, James Price-Harper on the left-hand side, of course, Lee Harrison and Joe Nathan, rather, just behind them as well on the second row of the grid. A rolling start, of course, here at Perth, Australia for the Barbagallo Wanneroo 160 Clicks. 5 lights on them. We're waiting for the race to get underway. Hirani crosses the line and it sets the green flag to go now, and it's a good getaway then from Hirani, coming down in towards turn 1. It's a goal, and look up the inside there for James Price-Harper, but no way through there. And oh, look at this, all managing to make it very cleanly through in the narrow part of the circuit, and cracking driving there throughout the field, Campbell.
Yeah, very much so. Everyone getting through the first turns cleanly. Joe Nathan managing to hold on to third place. Oh, someone's round. It's Odell towards, well, in the midfield, and he's collected
Woolard caught up in there as well. Sorry to cut in front of you there, Campbell. Woolard calling up and spinning it around, masterfully recovering it as well. And Harrison now under threat from Pete Walker coming through turn 6 and down the Railey Hill. Oh, contact between the two there. And they've got 65 laps left of this. Careful, boys, because there's a lot of racing left to come. Downhill then, Pete Walker not able to use the advantage of the slipstream at the moment, but closing up very nicely on the brakes in towards turn 7. But Harrison holding his line very nicely there as they come onto the main straight once again. But Pete Walker has got a superb run. Is he able to launch a move up the inside into there?
Brave.
Oh, he goes too deep though. He's far too deep into there. Harrison maintains the position, then Pete Walker has got that work all to do again. And you can see on the left-hand side of the screen the winners and losers off of the start there.
So yeah, the top 6 pretty much lined as they were, and a bit more movement down the further order. Odell, obviously the big loser of that spin, but Pete Walker really looks like he's a man on the mission now. He's already caught back up to the Harrison.
He was quite lucky there, to get away with his move at turn 1, because he very nearly got onto the grass. He looks around the outside. That's not an orthodox overtaking spot, but he might make it stick because there is more than one line through there, and he is ahead going down the back straight. But I'd expect Harrison to fight back soon.
Yeah, he's got a great line there as Walker, and up into 4th position then, so he's only one away from the podium at the moment. Just the VALOR Racing car ahead of him holds between him and 3rd position at the moment. So we're already on lap 3, such is the short nature of this circuit. And of course we're expecting drivers to pit around sort of lap 28, 29, such as the strategy. And Nick and Campbell, just how important is the strategy here at this circuit, of course, considering pit stops?
Well, as I said before, the lap is so short that you actually probably almost lose an entire lap just from pitting, so you don't want to spend too often in there, but of course you do have to choose wisely when you come in, especially if you're going to come out.
Oh, Bellingham round.
Oh, Bellingham spun round.
Narrowly missed by the two Kawasaki cars who are running immediately behind him. Yeah, to answer your question, it's probably not as... You probably won't lose as much from a pit stop here as you might elsewhere, so I'd be surprised if we saw anyone trying to no stop, because I think you'll lose an awful lot more time on old tyres than you gain from what is a fairly short pit lane and a fairly slow pit straight just through its length. But time will tell. We saw Harrison trying a no stop at the last hour-long endurance race at Bathurst, and he might well try it again.
Yeah, Harrison always one for a bit of a gamble at the moment, and he's got, of course, Pete Walker just ahead of him at the moment. Harrison maybe trying to sort of conserve his tyres in the early stage of the race. We know Harrison's kind on his front tyres, such as his driving style, and as Campbell mentioned, of course, he tried a no-stopper in the last endurance race at Mount Panorama, and it all was going so well for him, in the bag for a podium, until the last corner when he spun up the car and collided with the barrier and unfortunately ended up out of the race. But will Harrison try and gamble again? Only time will tell. Coming down the back straight then, down the hill, it's a very difficult part of the lap, especially into the braking zone. You really do accelerate quite severely coming down the hill, and in towards the braking zone does upset the balance of the car somewhat. Now, chaps, we've all driven these cars, and what would you say are the specific challenges that are present with the 600 horsepower Ford and the Holdens as well?
Well, my sum total of my experience is hitting the barrier, so I think maybe Campbell will be better placed to answer this one.
Yeah, they're very challenging to drive, and we've seen it throughout the season that one slip on the power can instantly send you round. They're extremely twitchy there's not much grip, and there's not much aerodynamic grip either. Despite that massive rear spoiler we're staring at just now, it doesn't really account for much in this type of car and the speeds they're going at. So the drivers need to be so careful out of these slow corners, and particularly at the start of the lap there are corners where you're accelerating and you're still turning the car, and it's incredibly easy to get wrong here. But we're looking at Walker. He's really mastered these cars. He had a win this season and a couple of podiums, and he's really on a charge here. He's proven to be very adept at this very managed, careful driving style that you need for his cars. You can't go flat out for an entire race, and that's part of the beauty of this series.
Yeah, certainly is on board then with the number 71, Pete Walker. As Campbell mentioned, of course, he's taken a victory so far in the season, the second race in the championship.
We're starting lapping here as Haddleton ahead. I think we did very slight contact with Nathan ahead. That might give Walker a run down the back straight.
Yep. let's have a look and see how he can get past her. Only on lap 6, and already lapping is coming into play then. Heading up into turn 7, Walker has a bit of a look, but no way through there, just too far behind, unfortunately. But Joe Nathan going a bit wide out of there, and that might compromise his run onto the main straight once again, in towards turn 1. We know Walker's strong on the brakes. Let's see if he can get the move up the inside. Contact between the two there, and Nathan off into the barrier. Walker slowing down to let him back through, and that's going to allow Lee Harrison and Ollie Knight to take advantage now, as well as Nathan spins coming back onto the circuit. So Walker is going to lose yet even more time, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was just
it looks like he's going to end up back in 9th place by the end of this.
I think it's 8th, actually. Just a little too ambitious in the brakes. He just demonstrated with the textbook moves is to line yourself up for the final corner, where there's not really a big enough braking zone, but he just a bit too aggressive, and ultimately it's cost both him and Joe Nathan several places.
Yeah, it certainly has done. Les looking at Campbell Wallace, of course, of the Kaibitsu racing team. He's had a relatively
bit of a queue for him
good
now.
start, actually. It is. He's his teammate, of course. We mentioned this earlier on in the season. You can't separate the two Kaibitsu teammates. They are very, very close in the championship and fairly close on the circuit, as you can see now as well. Wallace going a bit wide in towards
And they both made the same mistake as well.
Look at that. It's a carbon copy. Certainly does. So Nathan on the recovery drive, the number 26 versus, of course, Neil Crawford heading in towards turn 1. No way through there for Nathan versus Crawford at the moment. He's going to have to try again another day, and overtaking opportunities, as you can probably tell, given the narrow nature of this circuit, are relatively limited, and you really do sort of have to bide your time. There's only a couple of places where you can indeed get ahead, unless you fancy heading off straight into the scene of the accident.
Yeah, turn 1 and the back hairpin, if you have a good enough run, the corner we're going through just now, but you really have to be brave, and you have to be really alongside the car in front in order to make it stick.
Joe Nathan's got a good run out there though, and he's all over the back of Crawford's bumper. He comes out the slipstream now. He's trying to think maybe get a double slipstream as well from Wallace. He's going to come around the inside, and I think he's made the move sticking, always getting both of them, but it just goes a bit too...
That was nearly an unbelievable move. He might have got the both of them there if he'd just managed to keep it pointing straighter, but Nathan on a charge. He's determined not to let that setback set him back too much.
No, Nathan, of course, the only American in the field currently at this event, and I think he's taken some driving tips from Ken Block, given his attempts at overtaking in towards turn 7 there, but didn't done, unfortunately, and will have to live to fight another day. But the two Kaibitsu drivers now, Neil Crawford challenging Campbell Wallace, heading in towards the hairpin. So there we are, look at this. Oh, very close between the two, and Crawford does indeed get ahead of Campbell Wallace for now, but will that compromise Crawford's exit? And Joe Nathan now challenging Wallace as well, so Wallace set to lose 2 positions in the space of a corner. Out of turn 6 they come now, and onto the back straight once again. Joe Nathan side by side with Campbell Wallace, and he is indeed up into 6th position. Number 26 ahead of number 64. Nathan's next target, of course, Neil Crawford of the Kaibitsu team, just ahead of him now.
Yeah, Wallace not very quick at this stage of the race, maybe conserving his tyres, because Crawford didn't fight too hard against him, obviously being teammates, and Nathan just was able to drive clean round him.
Yeah, now look at him, he's sped straight to his rear bumper, so he's probably going to have a go at this position, probably in the same place as we saw it. In fact, because look at him there, he's really trying to close the distance as much as he can in every single braking zone.
Yeah, it certainly is. Number 26, of course, Joe Nathan we're talking about, coming down the mini straight, if you like, in towards turn 6. And Nathan, though, has got a good line there. He's taking a lot of speed. Yellow flag we can see on screen as well. Wonder what that's all about. Maybe it's a car just gone off into the barrier. Who's that then?
Looked like Hamilton.
Looks like Hamilton.
It is. So the Fire Cruiser Racing Team driver just having a bit of a coming together, unfortunately, with the barrier. Hopefully he's not obtained any damage and will be able to carry on with relative ease. But in towards turn 7 they go now. Joe Nathan has got a great exit out of there, side by side almost with Neil Crawford, heading down towards turn 1.
Should get it done here.
Yep, gets it up the inside. So then Joe Nathan ahead of Neil Crawford, up into 5th position for Nathan. He, of course, would have been hoping to get a podium in this race, but the other cars ahead of him have just romped away, of course, including that train with Pete Walker and of course the like ahead of him as well. But Pete Walker sitting in 3rd position at the moment as well, and he will be Pete Walker not in 3rd position, he's further down the order, of course, after having to let Joe Nathan back through. My apologies about that. But Sam Hirani leading the way absolutely dominantly. He's pulling a massive gap to his teammate.
It's interesting that Nathan's on the charge, whereas before that contact, that he had. It was Walker who was really out on the charge. So interesting how the dynamics of the race are going, even in these opening 12 laps.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes that can happen to you. You're just doing a sedate race and something happens to you, so you decide to throw caution to win and just try and go as fast as you can and see what you get out of it.
Yeah, Lee Harrison looking at there of the defenders. So it's the offenders 1, 2, and of course the defenders in 3rd position as well. So the N team's locking out the podium currently, lap 12 out of 65 we're on then. Ollie Knight in towards turn 4, not too far behind, trying to bridge the gap to Sam Hirani's dominant championship lead, of course, as we saw at the start of the thing. It was Sam Hirani on 170 points versus Ollie Knight's 117 going into this round. And of course it's double points at this round as well, which is ever more exciting and means ever more to play for in this race. And it's a very, very interesting test for the drivers as well, of course, and a very demanding test as well. Of course, being a 60-minute race, double points on the board. Just how much pressure, Campbell, does that put on you in these sorts of races?
You don't really think about it too much. Ultimately, it's just not a race to be run, and well, at the end of it, you happen to get more points for it. But then that double points, it's not really double points because it's to compensate for the fact that the race is longer and there's only one of them. So it's not. As a driver, you don't really think about it while you're out there. Obviously, if you're one of the front runners and you're battling for the championship, then it's possibly different. But when you're in the midfield, then it's one more race.
For sure. So there we are. We saw Alex O'Dell getting up ahead of April Dillon then as well. So number 23 ahead of number 315. Pete Walker, of course, just behind Dillon now as well in 10th position for the power team. So they've had a bit of a torrid start to the race. Unfortunately, incidents galore. Of course, we saw O'Dell going off on lap 1, and then Pete Walker a couple of laps ago had a bit of a coming together, unfortunately, with Joe Nathan in towards turn 1, and indeed had to wait up for Nathan as per the rules in this series, and is now looking to get ahead of April Dillon, of course, of the Howler Racing team to try and consolidate his race. But it's a long race, of course, 60-minute duration, and we're about 10 or so, 15 or so minutes into the race at the moment. And there's plenty of scope for opportunity, plenty of mistakes to be made, I'm sure, as well. So let's have a look then and see who is going to be performing quite well in this race as well. I want to give a quick shout out to Craig Woolard. Of course, he had a bit of a torrid start to on the first lap. He had a bit of a half spin, unfortunately, but he's driving quite well and recovering quite nicely.
Yeah, well,
Craig Woolard is quite an unsung hero, really, of this race, as you mentioned. Haven't really seen much of him since that first lap incident, but he's just quietly gone about his way and he's getting the results of it.
Yeah, certainly so. On board with them with April Dillon, of course, with Pete Walker just behind, coming downhill in towards turn 7. As I mentioned earlier on, a very difficult part of the lap. 50 laps remaining. Oh, and Dillon going wide out of the final corner there, and that means she's easy prey then for Pete Walker just to get ahead. Number 71 gets up into 9th position. He'll be very, very pleased with that, and his next target, of course, is his teammate Alex O'Dell. But around about 10 laps, rather, I should say. Oh, just about 10 minutes. Oh, who's at the barrier? That's Harrison, as you mentioned. Oh dear, the defender's driver going tumbling down the order into 4th position then, and I think his next threat will indeed be potentially, I think it might be Joe Nathan or something along the lines, someone along the lines of that. I haven't seen a caption recently, so couldn't tell you, but I think he might have just gone on the power a bit early coming out of there. Let's have a look at the replay then, Nick.
Yeah, it comes out. Look how it already looks a little bit unstable, and yeah, he puts just too much power down. Snaps just about manages to avoid the barrier, so manages to save it, and he won't have to come into the pits for any repairs, hopefully. But yeah, he sees Ollie Knight streak away, and that's one of the Independables who's lapped. And here's what happens at April Dillon. So yeah, pretty much the same thing, just put a little bit too much power down. The car wants to snap out, she has to correct for a bit, but you're already on the gravel by that point, and Pete Walker goes sailing by.
Here's Crawford having another incident we didn't see on screen, just going a bit wide through turn 1, recovering it quite nicely, but Campbell Wallace getting ahead, his teammate, of course, as well. So number 222, Neil Crawford, will be a bit disappointed with that at the moment. We're looking at the battle then for 6th position between Crawford and Wallace. Of course, Crawford in the similar livery car just behind him as well. In towards turn 6 they go now. Another yellow flag on screen. Who's that off in the foreground? I believe it is Tom Brooks of the junior motorsports team, the junior offenders team is what I meant, the young offenders team, coming down in towards turn 7 then, on board with Crawford, but no way through there unless Wallace goes a bit wide, but he holds his line quite nicely, and it's another opportunist moment for Neil Crawford, with Alex O'Dell fairly close behind now as well.
Yeah, Crawford's got to get this overtake done. Oh, and he's gone too wide. I was just about to say, otherwise Alex will get past him, but he already has.
O'Dell just putting the pressure on Crawford. Needed to keep an eye on his mirrors as well as watching his teammate ahead. Of course, O'Dell seems to be faster in these two Kaibutsu cars at the moment, and Walker's not terribly far behind either, so they might find themselves sliding down the order.
Yeah, they certainly might do, heading in towards the hairpin once again. These laps, of course, just tick by, so we're waiting to see, of course, whether Alex O'Dell can make further progress and potentially get himself up into the higher points paying positions. He's in 7th at the moment, which is a nice sort of middle points position, but if he can get up into 6th, 5th, maybe even 4th place by the end of this race, he'll be relatively pleased with that, of course. But a masterful recovery drive so far from the 30-year-old from Bedfordshire. Coming down the straight then in towards turn 1 once again. And he's just biding his time. You can see how much more confident he is with the car. It just looks a lot more stable than the Kaibutsu driver ahead of him at the moment. And he does look to be very, very comfortable. His teammate were on board with Pete Walker then. Through these S's, of course, the elevation and camber changes through the corner make it ever more difficult. And this is a very interesting corner. A lot of trail braking going through the car, and it upsets the balance,
Crawford.
of course. Yeah, spinning around. Oh, a 720 there for Crawford. If he was in Fast and Furious, he'd be quite pleased with that. But dear oh dear, a bit of an incident there for him, just spinning around, and the car looked very, very unbalanced coming through that corner, and the spin, of course, was testament to that.
Yeah, it's his 3rd incident in the race so far. Sort of, it just shows what endurance racing is all about. He's had the speed, but he's lost positions on 3 occasions, all due to mistakes.
He just seems to be switching off at this stage in the race, and it's something that can affect you in endurance racing when the races are that long. You can't be at 100% concentration through the entire time, but even slipping down can cause you to spin, as we just saw. Now here's O'Dell, much faster at this stage in the race than the cars immediately around him. He should be past walls very quickly indeed.
Yeah, coming down in towards turn 6, down the hill they go, and in towards that ever-tightening hairpin. But Wallace taking a lot of speed into there, but Alex O'Dell taking some more. He's lost a bit of time coming through the hairpin, and he's not going to have the run, I don't think, onto the straight unless he can deploy some kind of secret DRS that he's got hiding on his rear wing, but nothing like that in this series, unfortunately. So heading down in towards turn 7 they go, and down the hill into that difficult braking zone once again. Wallace going a bit wide through there. Alex O'Dell looking to take the corner a bit tidier, and he's on the straight then, coming down in towards turn 1. He goes defensive, does Wallace, heading in towards there, and defends the 9 quite nicely. Is he going to try and get the switch back, is O'Dell? But Wallace blocking off the apex. A masterful bit of defensive driving there from the Scottish driver, and heading up in towards those S's once again. It's very much one at a time through there.
Yeah, nice bit of positional placement there from Cameron Wallace. He knew that they were coming up to the S's, so he could afford to be slow on the apex, and even though O'Dell will be able to get a better exit out of the first corner, he wouldn't really have the legs to get any distance on him, so he's still lap after lap trying to find a way back, and I think that's Ben Howderson there coming up to lap there, gets out of the way, so he's not going to be a factor. Although Alex O'Dell does seem to have a better run, and Wallace goes immediately to the right, and he's going to think about going to go around the outside. He's tried a few daring moves like this in the season before, but not really. He's going to hang it all the way around the outside, and it's going to be the same into turn 1. I'm not sure if he's going to have to pull it off.
This is great driving between the two, side by side, coming down in towards turn 1 then. Wallace versus O'Dell for position then, and Wallace does indeed manage to stay ahead. O'Dell has to surrender the place, but of course he's got his teammate behind him now as well, and we've mentioned this so many times throughout the season. When you're in that position of attacking and defending at the same time, it's a very, very difficult place to be. Wallace going a bit wide through the S, and then coming down towards turn 6 once again, and Walker's got a great run then, looking to take maybe 2 cars in one. 3 wide in towards the hairpin, maybe. Oh, Alex O'Dell at the inside, Walker at the inside now as well. Wallace losing 2 positions into there they go, and Alex O'Dell getting up into 6th position, Walker into 7th, and Wallace unfortunately down to 8th.
Well, that overtake was brought to you by the power stunt team. That was masterfully synchronised there.
Walker, very brave, almost on the grass at one point, trying to get round both his teammate and Wallace immediately ahead of him, and ultimately he'll fancy his chance against O'Dell too.
Yeah, it certainly will do, but masterful bit of driving, as you mentioned there. It was a cracking rating and cracking synchronisation between those two. If they ever think of doing a stunt team, then I think that they're pretty much in luck with that. But of course, Alex Adele's got that lap traffic to contend with as well, but Matt Davies is a very cool head and knows when to get out of the way, so I shouldn't imagine he'll be too much of an issue coming down in towards turn 6, and indeed he gets out of the way quite nicely indeed, and lets Walker through on his travels as well. So, of course, Alex Adele's got to bridge the gap now to his teammate, or build a gap to his teammate and bridge the gap to those in front of him. Lap 23 out of 65, coming in towards that pit window, expecting, as I mentioned, drivers to pit around lap 28, lap 29 there and thereabouts, and that will be, of course, a very interesting tactic. When will drivers pit? Will they decide to go a bit longer on the set of tyres they're on in the hope that their tyres will be fresher in the latter stages of the race, or will they pit earlier, of course, and have the fresher rubber and try and get the undercut on the drivers ahead of them? It's a very interesting game, tactics, of course.
And
Walker getting it. Yeah, his tyre's looking a bit worn, unfortunately, but that's going to allow Wallace back into play now as well. So Wallace in the dirty air, unfortunately, but he's got the speed to use it at the moment. Can he get ahead of Walker? We lose the camera shot, come back to it now, coming in towards turn 6, but he's got a bit of a gap now, has Walker then, so a superb couple of corners and a great recovery there from the number 71, going a bit wide through turn 6, but carrying it on quite nicely once again. But how important, Campbell, are the tactics in endurance racing? How much would you say they play a factor when you pit?
Depends how brave you're feeling. If you're feeling brave, then you can do something really different. So in a race of this length, for example, the cars can hold enough fuel to do no stops, even if the tyres won't necessarily. So in this kind of endurance racing, most people will do one stop at around half distance. There's maybe some scope to like go and have fresher tyres at the end, but it's within. I'd find broad, obviously in longer races there's more scope for, if you can drive more carefully, you might be able to save an entire pit stop over your rivals, which of course has a corresponding gain in time. But in a race of this length, strategy's not a huge impact.
Yeah, I would imagine it's not so much the length of the race as we see Price-Harper just getting past lap traffic, but it's more the kind of track. I mean, we've seen quite a few bits of overtaken already, but we've also seen you can get stuck behind another car for 2, 3 or even 4 laps. So if you're going to try and do maybe even a 2-stopper, you might want to take that into account, how difficult it would be coming through the field again.
Well, exactly, because a 2-stop, the pit lane's short enough and the track's slow enough, you might be able to pull it off. But if you then get stuck behind 3 cars all in a 1-stop, then you're going to lose any advantage you might have gained, and in fact you're probably going to disadvantage yourself because you'll have to pit again.
Yeah, on board then with Sam Harani, the offenders driver, of course, leading the race quite dominantly. Got a great gap to his teammates at the moment. Coming up against lap traffic, as we mentioned, this is where it's important to be able to get ahead of those, and it's a very difficult thing to do, to let cars go past you, of course, especially if you're a lot faster. And you can see there Harani went a bit wide through the uphill turn 4, and that compromised his run through turn 5, unfortunately. Cutting to Pete Walker then, the number 71, and he of course is looking to get ahead of his teammate. But lap traffic, it's a very, very important factor, and exacerbated especially by the fact, who's going through the wrong pit lane? Is that Tom Bellingham?
That's a novel way of getting out the road. I guess it works. And
number 33
doesn't lose terribly much ground, so yeah, that's one tactic. Just
reminiscent of Max Chilton, I think it was the Chinese Grand Prix or Malaysian, one of those two, where he just went straight through the pits and let about 7 cars through to lap him.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, if you're not in a battle with another car, then you can afford to do something like that, and the pit lane is there and it's fully paved and everything, so it's one way of doing it.
Yeah, certainly an interesting tactic. So pit window just about coming to be open then. Lap 27 out of 65 are on here, the V8 Australicars, the Wanneroo 160 clicks. If you'd like to find out more about Really Rubbish Racing, of course, you can visit our website, www.reallyrubbishracing.co.uk. You can find us on there, find our forum, and have a look, and maybe get involved with some of our track days as well. So we look forward to potentially some of your company there. But it's shaping up to be a fairly interesting race. The battle for 6th position still reigning on between the 2 powered drivers. Alex Odell just remaining ahead of his teammate Pete Walker through turns 1. They go heading in towards turn 2 and turn 3, and Walker looks to be supremely confident with the front of his car. He just looks to be going that much more where he wanted to do. He's able to get on the power early quite nicely. Very difficult in these cars, as we've mentioned before, to get on the power, but Walker looking to be at 1 and in a bit of a trance in his Ford at the moment in towards the hairpin they go once again.
Yeah, you can see the effects of dirty there. He swept out a bit wide obviously being bothered by the turbulence coming off of his teammate's car, but you could just see the control he had there, downshifting twice whilst braking, whilst turning at the same time. He is full of confidence and he'll be fancying his chances to get by very quickly.
I wonder if Walker's maybe considering pissing a lap earlier than Odell, try and get past that way. Because I'd say he is being held up just now, and he won't want his race to be compromised too much, and if we are getting to the point where a pit stop would be viable, then he must be thinking about that.
It's probably something that's crossed his mind. It wouldn't surprise me at all, coming through turns 3 and 4, and it's very, very interesting, these tactics. Will there be team orders? I don't think that the power team will like to employ them, but it may be a bit of a necessity. We'll wait and see, of course, as we come into that ever more important pit window. And through the hairpin they go once again and out of it, and you can see how much more traction Walker's got, so maybe he conserved his tyres at the early stages of the race. He's got a great run coming down the back straight once again in towards turn 7. Walker versus Odell side by side, the two power teammates. Will he be able to make it move up the inside? Yes, he will. Oh, bit of contact, but getting it done very nicely. Number 71 ahead of number 23 on lap 29.
Yeah, got such better drive out the hairpin, and he was passed almost before he got down to the next corner.
Yeah, it was a very, very nice move from Pete Walker. Decided to time it just right and get ahead of his teammate, and minimal contact made between there, just the merest of touches, and we won't, of course, expect them to have had any damage. Yellow flag we can see at the top of the screen. That's because Tom Brooks is enjoying grass cutting more than he is the circuit at the moment as well, so getting back onto it fairly nicely. I think just letting some lap traffic through there, or potentially having yet another incident. Coming down the back straight once again on board with Odell, who's now trying to re-overtake his teammate, but will he decide to pit, maybe get the undercut instead? Doesn't go into the pits that time around, so he's staying out a bit longer. Maybe thinks he can mount a charge on his teammate Pete Walker, and it'll be fairly interesting to see whether one can indeed pull it off.
Of course, as well, drivers do have preference over cold tyres. Personally, I always like to be on cold tyres. Some drivers, such as Adam Smith, who sadly doesn't race with us much any longer, he used to like the hotter tyres. So it all depends on what you think you can do. Can you do the overcut, or can you do the undercut?
These tyres are slippery enough that I think gambling in cold tyres is asking for trouble. Is that somebody? Yes, it is someone pitting. Crawford in the pits from 9th.
Yeah, the Koibitsu driver into the pit lane then, the first of the scheduled stops. Lap 31 out of 65 are on then, so a bit later than we were expecting. Joe Nathan also following suit now as well, the number 26 of the Valour Racing team from 5th position into the box then. So he's pitting on lap 31 also. Into the box he goes, hits his marks quite nicely. And
I think 31 is about half distance, so I think that's when we'd expect most cars to come in. The fact that we haven't heard anyone so far, I think, demonstrates that no one's gambling on a 2-stop, which, as we said before, is probably sensible.
Yeah, probably quite the way to do things. I noticed actually when testing with these cars, mentioning the tyres actually, that they seem to get hot incredibly quickly, and especially through corners like this, turns 3, 4 and 5, when you're going through these long sweeping corners and carrying a fair old amount of corner speed, it really does.
Got a bit messy through there.
Yeah, he did, unfortunately. That's going to lose him time compared to his teammate. You can see the gap building up and up now, unfortunately, for Odell, so he's got all that hard work to redo again. Yeah, these tyres, they do heat up incredibly quickly, and they don't come down in temperature fairly quickly as well, unfortunately, so you really do have to wait quite a few corners before they get down to a moderate temperature, and that really can compromise your lap if you mess up a corner.
Yeah, it's doubly so in this kind of tight and twisting track, so Odell bails into the pits, and we're really pit stop's really starting now. Yeah, especially if you're in the position where Odell was there, when you're behind the other car in its wake, it obviously robs the front end of grip, gives you understeer, and that only serves to scrub the tyres across the track and wear them even faster. So Odell, I think, will be blessed relief to be out of his teammate's wake there. Walker, of course, in free air, he might get another couple of laps out of his tyres at this rate.
Yeah, this is when Walker needs to push to be able to get the jump on his teammate then. Of course, Alex Odell wasn't that far behind, but if Walker says a few lackluster laps and Alex Odell is on fire when he comes out the pit lane, not literally, of course, pace-wise, I mean, if he sets some blinding laps, he could quite easily get ahead of Pete Walker, such as the short nature of this circuit. And on board then with Walker, will he dive into the pits this time around, coming down the straight once again? And indeed he does, so he pits a lap later. So I didn't see his lap times, unfortunately, but coming in towards the pit lane now, stopping on his marks quite nicely. Cars in the pit lane include Matt Davies and Tom Brooks as well, and Walker hits his marks very well.
Willard pitting.
That's probably the most sensible thing to do, really, because it only allows his teammate one lap to do anything if he does have any kind of advantage over him.
Race leader in the pits as well.
Sam Ronnie's
yes.
in.
Yep, the leader of the race also in the pit lane as well. Sam Hirani, as you mentioned there. Nick, the
And
offender's number
Price-Harper
one.
now, who's running second.
Yeah, exactly. The advantage actually with the V8 Australicars especially is the fact that you can pit your two drivers at the same time. There's no sharing boxes, no queuing the drivers, no double stacking, anything like that we see in the likes of Formula 1 racing. And Hirani getting away quite nicely. James Price-Harper, of course, only just stopped, and it takes around about, I'd say, a good minute or so to get these pit stops out of the way. So it's you do lose a good lap or so.
You'll lose about a lap in the process of coming into the pits, stopping, waiting for your tyres to be changed, and then exiting the pits. That all takes nearly a minute, and a lap is nearly a minute, so you're quite right there.
Yeah, Alex Adele just came out behind Sam Hirani through turn 3 they go. Here's Pete Walker challenging Ollie Knight now, coming down towards turn 6. In 7th position is Pete Walker at the moment. So in towards there they go. Of course, these positions aren't necessarily representative of where they should be on the circuit. They're all sort of in a jumbled up order. So Pete Walker in 3rd position, Ollie Knight in 2nd. Of course, Ollie Knight yet to pit, I do indeed believe. And will he dive into the pits? Yes, he does. So there we are, Knight going into the pit lane now from 2nd place, and that's going to allow Walker a bit of clean air to push and get the gap on his teammate Alex Odell. So Knight in the pit, and I think that's Tom Brooks once again in the pit lane now as well. So maybe a few dramas there for the British driver.
Knight's had a bit of an exciting time. You can see the front of his car has been bashed in a little bit. You can't see it from this angle, unfortunately, but when he was coming in, you just noticed that.
Yeah, it's easy to damage these cars, of course. If you and it's easy to cause the damage as well. It's easy to spin up the rear tyres and just head in straight to the scene of the accident, unfortunately, or something along the lines. Maybe contact with another driver. And we know Knight is no stranger to a good battle every now and then.
Now, so here's Wallace, who hasn't pitted either, so he's briefly up to 4th. I wonder now if this is probably where you're going to see the last people come in, and if you don't see him come within a few laps, that could be the key to seeing who is on a no-stop strategy, as is our race leader, Lee Harrison. Speaking of no-stop strategies, he tried it, of course, famously at Bathurst. Almost kind of worked out for him. Well, I think he would have actually finished in the same position anyway, but of course he spun his tyres at the last corner, went flying into the abyss.
How could we forget that incident? He was not pleased about the outcome of that. He'll be hoping for a better outcome if that's indeed what he's doing here. This is, if he was to pit, it would be quite late at this stage. So I wonder if he's gambling on a no-stop. Probably on the basis that if he does do a no-stop, he's probably not going to lose anything, because he's probably going to be around 3rd or 4th in terms of pace, whether he pits or not. So he's got a chance now to maybe get a better result.
Yeah, Lee Harrison, of course, has got quite a gap, so he's just got to, if he doesn't stop, of course, all he's got to lose is the positions, or are the positions rather, that he's in. So if he can keep a consistent pace into the latter stages of the race here, the Wanneroo 160 clicks, he could be in with a good shout of a nice podium, but I don't think he'll have the ultimate pace to stay ahead of the likes of Hirani and Price-Harper. So 3rd position, it looks pretty realistic if Harrison does indeed decide not to pit, but that'll be a very risky strategy, especially considering, of course, his escapades at Mount Panorama. So do you think he'll have learned from his mistakes, or do you think he'll gamble again?
I think he was very unlucky at Bathurst, so I think he saw that how well it worked right up until the final corner, and I think he's working with that experience that he could do it and he can do it again, and lightning can strike twice, but it's very, very unlikely to, so I suspect that's his logic here.
Yeah, indeed, as a driver, you just have to go with what your natural things are. So if you're kind at on your tyres, you might as well try and do something different. I was completely the opposite myself. I was also hard on tyres, so I never really tried it, and it was risky staying out one less stop because I knew I couldn't pull it off.
The thing is that quite often these things are decided on the fly, so it's possible that he got to half distance and thought that my tyres aren't that bad, and so that's his impetus to then gamble on this kind of extreme strategy. As we look at the hours, so it's Harrison, Wallace and Bellingham down in 11th. They're the 3 cars who haven't stopped and at this stage probably won't.
No, certainly not. So there we just saw Harani getting past Pete Walker there as well, putting a lap on Pete Walker. So Walker down in 7th position. So Harani really is on the charge, even if he is only, of course, as I mentioned, in 2nd place. But he has got superior pace on Lee Harrison, as you would indeed begin to expect, of course, on fresher tyres. And Ben Hamilton getting out of the way there for about the 3rd or 4th time in this race at the moment. And coming down the straight once again in towards turn 1. He's got a nice bit of clean air and a nice sort of gap to Harrison that's coming down lap after lap. So surely it's only a matter of time. Alex Odell there in 8th place of the power team, his teammate of course. So Odell not managing to get ahead of Pete Walker at the moment. So didn't manage to get the undercut, unfortunately. And he's got a fairly, not large gap, I was going to say he's not too far behind. You can still sort of see them almost in the same shot, but it's going to be quite difficult for Odell to get ahead of his teammate.
Yeah,
from
especially
there.
as we saw in the previous stint, that as it went on and as the tyres started to go down a bit, the life in the tyres. So Pete had actually managed to. Sorry, who are we looking at here? It's Lee Harrison. Actually, I was just lapping Matt Davis. So yeah, Pete Walker had managed to keep more life in his tyres. So if Pete Walker's ahead, and that's Tom Bellingham again going through the support pit lane.
You can see Harrison and Harani both in the same shot. Harrison is he's not going to hold that for 25 laps.
No, he'll need a bit of a miracle. He'll need Harani to spin off. We don't see Harani making mistakes often, but when we do, they're generally rather large mistakes, unfortunately. But I think Harani, he's a very cool head, and he knows he's got the pace advantage on Lee Harrison at the moment, as well as James Price-Harper.
Yeah,
as well.
Price-Harper will probably get, in fact, really should get through for this race.
Yeah, of course, there's just a car separating them now. That's Matt Davies between Harani and Harrison at the moment. So for the lead of the race, it's all getting ever closer with 25 laps remaining. Coming down in towards turn 7, they are now once again Harani just getting ahead of Lee Harrison. And it could be this lap, it could be the next lap, but it really is only a matter of time, barring any mistakes, for Harani to retake the lead of the race. Coming down the main straight, and you can see how much more grip he's got, even on the straight. Coming out of there, his traction was absolutely sublime into turn 1 and out of it again. He's closing up ever closer. He's right on the gearbox of the Holden then, and he's weaving all over the back, trying to find a way through in towards turn 4. Doesn't manage to get way through there, unfortunately for the offender's driver. And heading into turn 5, that's very opportune there, but no way through. He's really got a great pace advantage. Downhill in towards turn 6, launches one up the inside of Harrison. In there they go. No way through there at the moment. Harrison taking the defensive line. And
Harani wants to get this done now. It looks like he's going to do, because he knows that the tyres, the tyres peak grip, but then once they go down, the grip loss starts to level off until you get to where Harrison is now.
He's got the line in towards turn 7, and can he make the move stick? It is done and dusted, so there we are. Harrison down to 2nd, Harani up into the lead of the race, and surely he's going to just gap and gap and gap and set fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap. That's especially what Sam Harani does indeed like to do. He treats every race almost like a qualifying sort of run.
Yeah, the driver who would have been watching that with interest, were he not driving at the same time, would have been Ollie Knight, because of course he's still in his championship. He would need to win this race, and Sam Harani to have some kind of big misfortune. So if those two cars had come together and there'd been an accident, that would have been a prime opportunity for him. But Sam Harani got by with almost no trouble at all, and looks like if he's going to go on to win this race, that will probably seal it almost effectively the whole championship.
Yeah, certainly will do. It'll be a shame there for Ollie Knight. We're hoping, rather, I should say, for a championship battle coming into the final round, but it doesn't look to be that way. Unfortunately, such is Harani's dominance in the V8 Australicars series at the moment, I'm afraid to say. But we'll have to wait and see. Anything can happen in racing, and it usually does indeed, with, of course, Ollie Knight just all over the gearbox of the Kaibichi driver. I'm not entirely sure whether that's Wallace or whether it's
Wallace is running 4th after, by virtue of not pitting, he'll have a job in his hands to keep this for any length of time. Knight already in faster car and driver combination on much fresher tyres at this stage should breeze past.
Yeah, but here's Knight. He's just going to go around the outside now and just wants to be careful it doesn't go too wide, and you saw him being a little circumspect there, but yeah, it really is only going to be a matter of time as the Kaibichi driver goes very defensive straight away. But he's left the inside open. Interestingly, Ollie Knight doesn't try and go around the inside. He's going to hang it around again, but he's just got so much superior drive. He might then look to hang it around so he can enter the inside for the sequence of S's, and I think he's indeed just in those ahead.
There we go.
That's it.
A stunning move there from Ollie Knight up into 4th place, so he's only 1 place away from a podium, but I think that's probably out of reach with just over 20 laps, 21 laps remaining of the race here, of course, at Perth in Australia. But a great overtake there from Ollie Knight, demonstrating that he's still got the racecraft even after what looks like a bit of contact with his front end. Harrison there in 2nd position at the moment, coming through the S's downhill towards turn 6 once again. Still not pitted. Wallace, Harrison and Bellingham still yet to pit, as you can see on the with the graphic on the left-hand side. So do we think Wallace and maybe Bellingham will be going for a no-stop strategy as well?
I think they really must be at this stage. They'd have pitted a while ago if they weren't trying it. And Tilly Harrison and Wallace are both in the similar positions in that they were in reasonably assured places if they were to stop, and they're probably unlikely to slip any further down by not stopping and taking the gamble. So not much to lose and potentially something to gain.
Yeah, potentially so. Coming in towards turn 1, looking at James Price-Harper, of course, sitting in 3rd position at the moment, just waiting to get ahead of Lee Harrison. Really is only a matter of time as such as Price-Harper's pace. You can see them in the same shot as well, just a lapped car between them. I think that may well be, is it Alex O'Dell? It is Alex O'Dell, so just in between those two at the moment. But such as Price-Harper's pace, he really is looking a lot more comfortable with his car, and quite understandably as well. His tyres are indeed around about 15 laps younger than that of Lee Harrison's at the moment, so you would indeed imagine him to have the pace. But Harrison, needless to say, he's coping very, very well at the moment.
Well, he proved that at Bathurst, where he successfully did exactly what he's doing. You need to be careful, but it's not impossible. The tyres will last more or less the full hours. This track isn't as demanding on tyres as somewhere like Eastern Creek, where they were starting to wear out after 20 minutes of racing, and we saw some cars pitting in the 40-minute race there. This track it's not kind on tyres, but it's not as punishing as some, so you can do it. It's just a matter of will you have enough pace to be able to do it successfully.
Yeah, this is interesting because Alex is trying to unlap himself from Lee Harrison, and James Price-Harper is going to be right behind him. So, well, it's going to be a miracle if Lee Harrison kept position ahead of James Price-Harper as well. But he's got to be sure that they don't, all three of them, get tangled up and the situation even worse.
It's
So what is the code of conduct for that? Because of course, technically, Alex O'Dell, though he is entitled to unlap himself, does indeed have to let James Price-Harper through, but he is trying to get ahead, which, like I say, he's entitled to do. It's a very, very difficult sort of thing to work out. He's side by side as O'Dell with James Price-Harper, who lets him through, so that's the result of that. But now Price-Harper is going to be right all over the back bumper of Lee Harrison, his N-Team's compatriot, coming in towards the S's once again, up the hill, over the crest, in towards turn 4, and then 5 once again. Surely James Price-Harper is going to look at a move up the inside in towards turn 6's hairpin. It'll be a very, very close move there if he can get it done, but he hasn't got a great run into there, so maybe he's going to try and get a better exit out of turn 6 and head down in towards turn 7, of course, with that long-ish back straight. And indeed, he's got great traction out of there. You can see how much more comfortable he is with the car. O'Dell off into the background and heading down.
Unlapping.
It certainly does. So coming downhill then once again, and it's James Price-Harper versus Lee Harrison. Harrison doesn't bother going defensive. It always looks to sort of concede the position, but still, James Price-Harper isn't able to get ahead. That was very strange. I really thought he'd have the pace.
Circumspect. He knows that he's unlikely to catch Rani unless Rani makes a mistake, so there's no sense doing a death or glory move against Harrison, who he will get past sooner rather than later. So he just needs to bide his time, make sure it's a clean pass, make sure he's still in a position to pick up the pieces if Rani makes a mistake up the road.
It's brilliant bumper to racing there, really demonstrating that the V8 Australicars Championship is quite a clean series and indeed provides good racing, as if you had any doubt, I'm sure. In towards turn 6 once again. And Price-Harper then got great traction out of there. Oh, Harrison spinning at the rear tyres. Bit of contact between the two there. Coming down the back straight. Once again, surely Price-Harper is going to get ahead of Harrison. Once again, he's not got great straight line speed. Has Price-Harper in towards the corner they go once again. And indeed, he doesn't get ahead. But he's got a great amount of traction out of the final corner. Who's that off? That's Craig Willard recovering from a spin. Side by side with Price-Harper and Hirani in towards turn 1. And is signed, sealed then and delivered almost for Price-Harper. In towards the corner they go. A nicely judged mover there for the offenders driver, the 24-year-old, up ahead of Lee Harrison, who is down, of course, to 3rd position.
Yeah, demonstration there of what Campbell said earlier. When we saw Hirani coming up to him using that peak grip, he had it done in almost 2 or 3 laps, but it's taken James Price-Harper quite a lot longer to get by his teammate. Of course, not as fast as Sam Hirani, but still quite a bit considerably faster than Lee Harrison. Here's the replay there of Alex O'Dell. Yeah, he just spun his tyres.
Classic, yeah. Just if you're even slightly too hard on the power in these cars, they send you around, as O'Dell's just demonstrated.
Yeah, 600 horsepower going to the rear wheels is quite a challenge for the best of drivers to tame. So coming, lap 50 out of 65 we're on. In towards the left-hander goes Sam Hirani, of course, who has had quite a dominant run in this race, I think it's fair to be said. And James Price-Harper, his nearest rival on track and his nearest rival in the championship so far, or not nearest rival in the championship, rather in 3rd position in the championship, is Price-Harper. Is having quite a good run. That win, that maiden win, still eludes him. He's had such a bad luck of run, unfortunately, has Price-Harper. But it looks to be like Sam Hirani has got the pace over his teammate once again.
Yeah, James Price-Harper does tend to come a bit more alive in the closer stage of the races, so maybe it's just a mental thing as others are getting more fatigued. He's still more fresh, or maybe the counting down to the final lap spurs him on a bit more. But I think it's going to take a sudden huge jump in pace for him to reach his teammate, as Alex O'Dell does finally unlap himself from Lee Harrison.
Yeah, gets ahead there fairly nicely, does Alex O'Dell. And that's Ben Harrison also in the pit lane as well. So, and perhaps another incident there for the Fire Cruiser Racing Team driver. But you can see how much Harrison's beginning now to struggle with the tyres, even more so than he was just a couple of laps ago. He's sort of squirming for grip. He's all over the road almost. And Campbell Wallace, of course, is Alex O'Dell's next target.
Yeah, also on very old tyres, and they've done 50 laps. Nearly 50 minutes of racing. It's not easy to keep them on the track at this stage. They will be all over the place, and at this stage, if you're in that position, anyone who comes up, almost, you don't really bother. Even if you're racing someone for position, if they've come up to you on much fresher tyres, it's not really worth fighting, because you just risk making a mistake. You're really running your own race in that kind of position, just driving, being as smooth and as consistent and as quick, indeed, as possible, just with very little regard to what's going on around. So it wouldn't surprise me if Wallace stays wide to let Price-Harper through, and indeed he does, because there's no sense in holding anybody up, whether you're entitled to or not.
No, indeed not. So Wallace there just sort of getting a bit more clean air, and hopefully that will allow him to stay ahead of Alex O'Dell, or so he will indeed be hoping, coming through the hairpin once again. And out of it now heading down that back straight, of course. And it's not a particularly long back straight, of course, but the downhill sections and the just the fact that it's a straight, of course, does indeed provide an opportune overtaking spot. You can see Wallace there struggling with understeer as well. And how much would you say the tyres, someone can jump in on this, how much would you say the tyres are affected when they sort of get down to this level of wear?
It plateaus almost, and maybe not at the very extreme lows where they're at now, but the tyres in these cars, they start off obviously at peak grip, and if you imagine it as a percentage scale, so they're maybe at very good grip until 90%, and then it'll go down, but probably at around 70% it starts to plateau, and they don't really change that much in terms of feel for a very long time, albeit at the level of grip you're getting from them is quite low. But once you're now getting to this stage where Wallace and Harrison will be at, where the tyres are very second-hand indeed, then it's going to be more challenging to keep the cars on the track, because they will start to really drop off as you're almost getting to the canvas.
Meanwhile, Wallace and O'Dell exchanging places. So O'Dell up into 7th position then. Wallace down to 8th place. You can see him struggling with the car there, such as the lack of grip he has got at the moment. Meanwhile, April, you mentioned her that much throughout the race, is battling with Neil Crawford, the other Kaibitsu driver, for 9th position. Crawford got a great run through turn 5, heading down towards turn 6. Down the hill they go. Crawford looking up the inside into there. It'd be a great overtaking move if he can pull it off, but I think, no, he doesn't. Yes, he does. Fantastic. Great overtaking move then from the number 222. Neil Crawford up into 9th position ahead of 315 April Dillon then. A great opportune overtaking move from the Kaibitsu driver, but I don't think that April Dillon is going to have an answer to that, unfortunately, as much as she would like to, but Crawford going a bit wide through there, and that allows April Dillon to retake the position then, up back into 9th position, so they're exchanging places like there's no tomorrow at the moment.
Yeah, one mistake is all it takes there. We saw Crawford just getting a little too eager on the brakes and just running a little bit wide. Probably still mentally in a slight high from having pulled off that move.
Yeah, now he's almost lost the rear end. They're going too wide, and he's got to have now to let James Price-Harper by. So it's still really sort of going from bad to worse from Neil Crawford. I think that's 4 spins now counted from him each time after just having made an overtake.
Yes, an unfortunate set of circumstances, I'm afraid to say, but 10 laps now remaining, less than 10 laps, 9 laps remaining of the V8 Australicars here, the Wanneroo 160 clicks at Barbagallo Raceway, and it's getting ever closer for that podium position, of course, for Lee Harrison. Will he be able to hold on ahead of Ollie Knight? Will his tyres succumb eventually? You can see Ollie Knight, we're looking at on screen. He, of course, has made a pit stop, and Lee Harrison, of course, in 3rd position. You can see with that graphic on the left-hand side of your screen, has not. So will he be able to stay ahead? I think he's got quite a significant gap too.
Crawford going off again.
Yes, he's
you want to be careful of these curbs. It's disturbingly easy to get beached in these massive curbs you have around here, but he gets going again.
Yes, so as I was mentioning, of course, the podium position is very much up for grabs between Lee Harrison and indeed I've forgotten who's in 4th. Ollie Knight, apologies, terrible.
Joe Nathan's probably not that far behind either. Ollie Knight, I think, has had a few problems with traffic, so we haven't seen any gaps, but I suspect Nathan is not terribly far behind.
No, perhaps not. So, Sam Perroni, the dominant force in this race, as I'm sure you know, it's been the story of the V8 Australicars here at Barbagallo Raceway. Heading down in towards turn 1 is James Price-Harper, riding the car very nicely, seems to be very much at ease with his car, and is not setting consistently, not setting fast laps, but is setting consistent laps at the moment. So he's enjoying the balance of his car, probably enjoying a nice Sunday evening drive as well. And Lee Harrison is still trying to defend for 3rd position. Of course, that's Campbell Wallace, I believe it is, just fairly close behind at the moment as well. So, of course, Campbell Wallace is a lap down from Lee Harrison, but he's looking to get ahead at the moment.
So there's the gap then between Lee Harrison and Knight. Of course, Lee Harrison pit from 4th position, so if he does lose it out, and he's really gained nothing and lost nothing, everyone, right? Of course, as Campbell said, the interesting is where Joe Nathan will fit into this, because if Lee Harrison succumbs to him as well, then that would have been a bad decision by him not to pit.
Yeah, it certainly may have been. In towards turn 6 they go, on board then with Ollie Knight, 2nd place in the championship at the moment. He can probably see his championship hopes unfortunately fading away from him. He has missed a round in the championship, which really has hindered his progress somewhat, unfortunately. He could have taken a victory in that round for all we know. I mean, anything can happen, of course, as we mentioned, and he is a very competent driver, has taken 3 victories in the series so far to date, and he would, of course, like to be adding to that tally, but unfortunately it doesn't look like he'll be able to do so. Meanwhile, Tom Bellingham getting ahead of Matt Davies for 12th place, so Bellingham getting a point on the board at the moment. A shame there for Davies, of course, he would have liked to have taken a point, but Tom Bellingham having superior pace and looking to be very comfortable with his car at the latter stages of the race.
Yeah, we haven't really seen too much from him apart from going down the wrong pit lane whenever he needs to. But he's doing well. He hasn't really taken to this series as well as other ones, but he's done a no-stop race. He hasn't really suffered any dramas that we've seen. And well, speaking of dramas,
Wallace going round. Yes. So tyre wear starting to catch up.
Yeah, of course, Wallace hasn't pitted. Meanwhile, his teammate Neil Crawford has. Let's have a look at that incident on board then, coming through turn 6.
Just on the grass.
And just understeer. Yeah, just the car completely understeered off the road there. That really does demonstrate how much Wallace is struggling with grip. You can imagine how Lee Harrison must be feeling, as well as Tom Bellingham. Bellingham, of course, hasn't pitted, as far as I'm aware. And you got ahead of Matt Davies then as well. So Davies must really be struggling with his car at the moment for someone who's on 59 old lap old tyres, rather, to get ahead.
Yeah, it's a bit of a timing glitch there. Matt Davies has appeared twice, so I'm not sure which one is the real Matt Davies. But yeah, he's won a pretty good race. He's not always attending, but he seems to have at least got on top of the car, so he's not sending it into the barriers as often as some of the more regular drivers, in fact. So a good quality measure driver, and we see someone spin across. That's Ben Haddleton for probably about the 4th or 5th time now out of that same corner.
Yeah, it's such an easy corner to spin up the rears. Of course, you're going uphill, and you're putting 600 horsepower through the rear wheels. You can kind of imagine what that would be like on flat ground, for crying out loud. Going uphill whilst turning the car at the same time really does seem to upset the balance a bit, unfortunately. And I'm sure that it's caught many a driver out. Well, it has caught many a driver out, and I'm sure it will manage to do so probably in the future as well, if we do indeed ever return to Barbagallo Raceway.
Yeah, and especially in these cars, which are twitchy at the best of times. Aerodynamically, they're also not quite as balanced as one might hope. So it means that if you do start spinning, then it's very hard to save it. And I think that's why we're seeing so many drivers just having spins where they might have just done a drift before, and obviously a spin loses you significantly more time and looks worse in the cameras.
I'm fairly sure that's probably the least of their worries. But anyway, 4 laps now remaining of the V8 Australicars here at Barbagallo Raceway. Sam Hirani, of course, in the lead of the race, and is looking to be fairly dominant and fairly comfortable out in front. But you never know, some kind of technical drama could curtail his problems. And James Price-Harper is not too far behind on the road as well. So if Sam Hirani does indeed make an uncharacteristic mistake, it could be all to play for the race victory. Never say never. Of course, coming in towards turn 4 is Ollie Knight in 4th position at the moment. Wondered if he would be able to hold on to the podium. You can see how much the gap has shrunk between Harrison and Knight at the moment. In towards turn 6, Lee Harrison goes now. Meanwhile, Ollie Knight, we just saw a few minutes ago, will probably be coming into that around about now, there and thereabouts. So it's fairly close between those two on circuit. It'll be getting ever closer, but I do wonder whether Ollie Knight will run out of laps before the race ends.
It looked like Harrison was going into the pits line. He was taking into that corner. Very unusual at this stage. He's not racing anyone. He will be in a minute, but he's not now.
He's got such a uncharacteristic, rather uncomfortable sort of look in his driving style. You can see him sort of soaring at the wheel, just trying to get the car to turn in. You'd expect that, of course, from 62 lap old tyres. Unfortunately, the gap ever shrinking, of course, with Ollie Knight on newer tyres and coming in towards the final few laps. I just wonder whether Ollie Knight is going to be close enough. I still think he's going to run out of laps, but it would be very interesting to see whether it could be a last lap overtake. But I think he's probably going to run out of time, is the number 21.
Although that gap, as we see from that wonderful rear view shot we've become so accustomed to the series, it does seem to be getting smaller every straight, every corner. So he might just have a lap, maybe 1 lap to do it.
Yeah, he's closing in, I think, about 2, 3, 4 seconds a lap, and on a 52-second lap, that's a massive amount of time to be gaining. So I think next race, I think we will see a last lap lunge or two.
Yeah, it could be very, very interesting. So the battle for 3rd position does indeed begin to intensify as we come into the penultimate couple of laps. Now you can see the advantage that Sam Hirani, who just crossed the line, changing the ticker tape at the top of the screen there, has got on the rest of the field. Lee Harrison, of course, who hasn't pitted, he's got supremely older tyres, of course, on his car. And look at that, Ollie Knight up the inside in towards turn 6. Contact between those two, and that sends Lee Harrison out wide. Ollie Knight, surely he's going to have to slow down, does he? No, he doesn't. Oh, well. Lee Harrison spins up the car. And there we are. That's going to really hamper their progress.
Play here if he's anywhere near. As through goes Hirani to lap them. Crawford goes through to unlap himself. Harrison eventually getting going, but Knight still going at half speed down the straight. And look, Nathan's right on Harrison's tail now. Look at this.
He could be in contention for a podium coming into the final lap. That'll be very, very interesting if we'd be able to get it up the inside.
This is going to be tight.
Oh no, this is if he's not too careful.
Oh goodness gracious me. It's like Spa in 2000. Contact between the two into turn one. Harrison off into the first corner, and Joe Nathan not slowing down. You'd expect him to, but he's not. Is there going to be a post-race penalty for Joe Nathan?
I suspect the stewards will want to sort that out. It's understandable at this stage because he'll just want to make the finish, and obviously the steward's can apply whatever they see fit, whether they judge that to be a racing incident or whether they feel that Nathan should have waited. But you can see just the crowd of cars now behind that incident at the hairpin between Harrison and Knight bunched the field right up, even though they're all on different laps. As meanwhile,
Sam Pirani then rounds the final corner. It's been a dominant display from the British driver, and he extends his championship lead. Sam Pirani takes the victory here at Barbagallo Raceway, and we wait then for James Price-Harper to claim second place. He's miles down the road.
Who's that?
Lee Harrison, a lap down. Who's that off?
Big accident.
Time, of course it is.
Of course, Tom Bellingham. There we are. Indeed, he catches out James Price-Harper crossing the line as well. Thank heavens for virtual racing. Have a look at that then, Nick.
I think he clips a mixture of the curb and barrier and flips the car, and I wonder if Wheeler beat him to the line there, because I think they were racing for position.
See that? Oh, that's
perfect.
He's a very, very brave driver, is Bellingham, and crossing the line very nicely there. And as I said, you can see Price-Harper going off in the foreground. Certainly does not, but it's Sam Pirani's day down under a 5-second penalty indeed for Joe Nathan, demoting him to 4th position. Sam Pirani taking the victory. James Price-Harper in 2nd place. Joe Nathan in 4th. Of course, Pete Walker finished 5th. Ollie Knight then down to 6th place after that last lap incident. Unfortunate for him, and that means the championship is all but over. Alex Odell taking 7th. Campbell Wallace staying in a masterful 8th place after not pitting. Matt Davies in 13th, Ben Harrison failed to score in 14th. Meanwhile, Tom Brooks crashed out of the race, and Dave Morley disconnected, unfortunately, from the race servo. But what does this mean for the championship then? Well, as I mentioned, it's all but over. Sam Pirani, 210 points compared to Ollie Knight, 131. So quite a large gap for Sam Pirani, and I think he'll probably be able to clinch the championship. In fact, I'm pretty certain he'll be able to clinch the championship next time out at the Circuit of the Americas.
Very much so, I'd say. It's so far ahead, and just a mixture of his consistency and Knight, just a few slip-ups here and there has cost him.
Yep, Teams Championships then, the defenders jumping up ahead of Howler Racing, Valor Racing Team jumping the Independables, and Kaibitsu getting ahead of Tropico Motorsports as well. Anyway, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have commentated on the Wanneroo 160 Clicks. Thank you to myself. Thank you to Campbell Wallace. Thank you to Nick Loomis. And
still got highlights to do.
We have indeed. Let's have a look then. Coming down in towards turn 1, of course, it was Sam Pirani who eventually got the jump, heading down in towards there, and managed to stay ahead of James Price-Harper. Further back, there was a bit of incident between Alex Odell, and of course he caught up with Craig Woolard, getting a bit of contact between there, and eventually managing to get things righted. But a couple of laps later, it was all to play for, and it was Tom Bellingham who sadly succumbed to that. Meanwhile, Pete Walker and Joe Nathan had a bit of a coming together a few laps following that. Joe Nathan trying a bit of a Gymkhana overtake into the final corner and not managing to get ahead of those drivers. Had to wait another couple of laps. Meanwhile, Lee Harrison ended up in the barrier. Kaibitsu drivers all over the show with a lot of overtakes and a couple of spins here and there as well. Meanwhile, a great battle between the two power drivers, getting ahead of Campbell Wallace in towards the hairpin. Probably the overtake of the race.
I think we're seeing that this short and twisty track caught just about everybody out at some point during the race, with the possible exception of the top two.
Yeah, certainly did. So carrying later on in the race, of course, it was Junior Motorsports versus the Kaibitsu drivers. Look at this battle between Lee Harrison and James Price-Harper. Forgot about this, and Lee can't forget this one though. Alex Odell versus the Kaibitsu driver in towards turn 8-6 they go then, and there was plenty of overtaking through there as we saw throughout the race. Of course, it was Tom Bellingham getting ahead of Matt Davies. Through there they went, but unfortunately
the race-defining incident, which ultimately bunched the field up to such an extent that
he did indeed claim the victory overall, and it was a spectacular finish for Tom Bellingham, crossing the line, and well, what can you say more about that?